Our presenter this evening is David Jamieson, who is an OUBS alumni. David has over 25 years of business and management experience. He is an experienced coach and mentor and runs and delivers leadership management programs. I will now hand you over to David, who will tell you a bit more about his background. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Janet. Well, hello, good evening, and welcome everybody to the webinar, Harness the Power of Coaching to Deliver Lasting Change, which is, it's kind of trips off the tongue. So, welcome everybody. I'll just give you a little bit of background myself. I think really we could start, I suppose, with the words of Woodrow Wilson, looking at change. If you want to make enemies, try to change something. I mean, this goes back, what is it, over 150 years, but I think it's as true today as it ever was. Back to myself, executive coach, lecturer, trainer, that's really what I do. From my CV perspective, I've got experience in from various roles and sectors. Professions include education, financial services, disaster restoration, sounds really exciting, ISO or quality management systems, and recruitment. Positions that I've held, management positions held at branch, regional, key, national account level. Also been very much involved in business development and project management. Now, the first two really led into the final, I guess, career phase for me, which is learning and development. Coaching, mentoring, teaching, training, tutoring, yeah, the 3 T's, I guess. I've worked with colleges, delivering, as Janet kindly said, programs in leadership and management, also in coaching and in personal development, so covering a range of areas from, I don't know, assertiveness skills to communication. Qualifications for credibility, I guess, as well as anything else, you know, the learning process, certainly with the Open University. If you want to see what they are, please visit my webpage, which will be coming up at the end. But if you want to know anything, you know, sort of, please post your questions. I hope that everybody can hear me okay. If you can't, then please do let us know. Emoticons, yeah, fine. If you want to include those as well, absolutely great as we move along. So, when change goes wrong, this was the theme of our presentation by Paul Taylor. Really good presentations when it was the Jam. If you're here this evening, Paul, welcome. I did enjoy your presentation. He was looking at key reasons for change failure. Change, organisational specific changes, leadership, organisational and human factors. And tonight what we'll do is we'll walk through the human factors, which of course is all about you and me and other individuals affected by change. So what I thought we'd do, first of all, is to have a look at where we are. I mean, that's us in the centre, you know, sort of pig in the middle. And what's expected from us is the production, the performance of whatever it is that we're making or providing, if it's products or if it's a service. And of course we receive feedback on, I guess, a regular basis from line managers, customers, colleagues and anybody else that we work with or that we provide or receive a service to and from. We will be affected by the external environment, which encompasses, I don't know, many areas. Without looking at the stakeholder analysis to some degree. Financial, within an organisation, they're normally, if not always, looking at ways to reduce costs and drive income, increase sales, for example. And of course that's going to have an impact upon the individual. Decisions that are made, the strategy that they follow, the strategy that they change and adapt as appropriate. HR, training needs. Individuals do have their own training needs, and of course there will be training. Sometimes it's seen as forced upon individuals, and it's how the person does actually respond to that. Are they getting the training that they need? And are there perhaps any courses that aren't particularly relevant to them or to their requirements? Working practices. again, will be affected by the introduction of, for example, lean management, competition, external competition, maybe even internal competition will have an impact upon the individual's performance, and of course the way that the organisation responds to pressure, internal and external. Really, I guess we're looking at your line managers and the people that you're working with, your colleagues. The structure of the organisation, is it tall, is it flat, is it short, fat and hairy? And organisations come in all different shapes and sizes, from micro organisations to the multinationals. Of course, we're reading about so much in the press nowadays. Culture within the organisation, the way we do things, that will have an impact too. How we respond to that. Do we adapt to the culture, or do we, I don't know, suffer through the culture? And that can perhaps have an impact upon the longevity of our career within that organisation. So all of these lead to motivation within the individual and will have an impact upon their production and performance, their output. So moving on from this, we've covered a number of areas that change will be implemented because of or to achieve. What I'd like at this early stage is to involve you and think about your own feelings when it comes to change, based upon your own. Hello, has somebody just joined? Is that NWDH? Based upon your own experience. Sorry, Janet, I think you're cutting now. Sorry, I'm taking your part.
The poll is open now, David, so if everybody wants to have a look at it and decide between A and E, A being 0 and E being 10, they can sort of vote on what their change felt like, and hopefully people will put their reason 3 words in the chat box and I'll be able to tell you what they say. So
it's a bit of a challenge really, isn't it, because I've put 0 to 10. And what we're asking to do is convert that 0 to 10 to 1 to 5, and then translate that 1 to 5 to A to E.
Yes, so the limitations of the poll on OU Live. I do apologise.
Yeah, but we are talking about your university there, aren't we? And I'm sure everybody will be able to adapt to that.
Yes. I must admit, when we were thinking about 3 words, I've recently gone through a change at work, and one of the 3 words I thought of were rushed, dizzying, and exciting.
Fabulous. It's a bit like Simon Mayo phone program, isn't it? You know, sort of 3 words to describe your day.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. We've got 3 words really for, I suppose it's damage limitation on the one hand, and of course we're not sort of twittering. And if you've got 3 words, and the 3 words that come out will almost certainly be the truth, the way you really feel about, you know, the subject.
Yeah, well, they're coming in now, so I'll read some out to you, and they're interesting. There's lack of engagement. There's lack of cohesion, secret, impact depends communications, imposed, and amount of control. So they're very interesting. Oh, think HR first. So there's a lot coming in there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what AOS understanding is. But lack of communication, that's always a difficult one. Saying but not doing. There's, yes, keep them coming, folks. Lots coming in here. Yeah. Okay, I don't know what you think of some of those, David.
Yeah, I mean, that's fairly typical, really. I think that probably one of the biggest ones there is communication, which we will certainly come on to, and imposed change as well, which goes back to, as I mentioned on the previous slide, about perhaps training courses as well. I mean, I've taught I've taught before where individuals were on training courses, and it's just really a case of bum seats, which really meant that they didn't really engage fully initially, and it did actually take some work to really get them on board and committed to the training itself. Control, yeah, control is an issue as well. Perhaps it's lack of control, it's enforced control, and it may be some kind of power struggle. ALF, That was interesting. Go back to the AOF, would you?
Yes, just bear with me one moment. There we go. AOF, or I think it's AOF of understanding. Lack of communication is down there. Oh, there we go. Lack of understanding, I think it was.
Yeah.
Sorry, we misunderstood. Lack of understanding. Yeah, and there's
good.
another one: unclear expected outcomes.
Knee-jerk
and lack of engagement. Yes. I can't seem to pull up the poll results, but I can see them on the top. So we've got A, 4 people, C5, D1, and E1. So I guess that's a lot of people don't feel very happy about change then.
Well, I'm really surprised.
I'm going to let you carry on, David.
Okay, thanks. I did actually try something different at the start. I timed it perfectly to the second as well. I was actually playing David Bowie, changes. And it was coming up as showing, on the talk thing. So I thought that everybody could hear it, but I presume that you didn't. So at the end, I suppose we can all join together and sort of sing the song.
Actually, I did hear it, David.
Oh, you did?
Because I'm a bit of a David Bowie fan, so I did pick it up. I'm sure lots of other people did too.
Good.
What a good idea. I hadn't actually connected that. Very well done.
Wonderful. Right, so moving on from that, so thanks everybody for sharing, by the way. It's great to share experiences, and I think that's really what we're looking at tonight, the way that we organisations look at change, how it actually impacts upon people, with a view to perhaps changing attitudes as well. So, if we look at success, John Cottle research going back to 1995, only 30% of change programs were successful. If you do the maths, as the Americans say, that means that 70% were unsuccessful. Not a very good ratio. Moving forward, was it 13 years, St. McKinsey & Co., similar kind of survey, 30% again. So if we look at this today, I haven't got the stats unfortunately, but if we're looking at another 13-year period in 2021, by, I don't know, PwC or whoever it might be, what do you think? Do you think it would change at all? Is it going to improve? Or is everything that's happening, that, facilities that we have? I think it's fairly unlikely. But it can change. That's the important thing. So, this is what it's all about. It's all about people. That's you, me, your colleagues, up there in the top right corner of the slide. Where's that meeting taking place? Outside of the factory gates, outside of the office, just waiting to be let in. Water cooler moments. People are chatting. Are they chatting positively? That's my question. Are they engaged with what's going to happen, or are they talking about what they're going to lose because of the change? Is it because of, I don't know, are they losing the job role, so they're losing the sense of pride that before they used to enjoy, love going to work, and all of a sudden things happen around them over which they've got no control, which was mentioned. And perhaps the money, the benefits and the package is changing as well. Maybe they've had to reapply for the position and they've now been forced to take on a rare value role. The social side as well is something that's not always considered. And the impact upon your colleagues as well. It might be that some of your colleagues leave the organisation, for example, if they're going through redundancy. I don't know if anybody here tonight has been through redundancy. I have, and it can be very difficult. I think fortunately at the time I was studying with Open University, so going through it I was able to kind of rationalise it. It was business re-engineering, that the company was moving forward in a different direction, and my particular area within the business was going to be adversely impacted. But also thinking about colleagues, there is such a thing as the survivor syndrome. So you've lost some of your colleagues, the person that you sat next to, that you sat opposite for the last I don't know, 10 years, and that you had a really good rapport with. All of a sudden, some of those colleagues have disappeared. So you miss them on the one hand, but you also feel guilty perhaps that they've lost their positions, they've lost their jobs, and you're there. Hi, is there somebody who's got a party going on in the background?
Yes, I think somebody has got their mic on. Can you all check that your mic is turned off? It's the talk button above the participants. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, so it is that guilt feeling perhaps on the one hand that you're there, and of course if they've gone, it might be that moving down to responsibilities, you've then got to pick up their work as well. So all of a sudden, for the same hours, the same rate of pay, etc., etc., you have actually increased your workload by maybe 10%, 15%, 25%. Other things will be impacted: freedom, your autonomy. As I mentioned, perhaps you've changed position. How does that make you feel? Do you feel more secure in the role? I think it's unlikely. It could be your working hours have changed too, but you're actually working fewer hours. For some people that might be a godsend, but for other people it could be that if you're hourly paid, for example, that it could have a massive impact upon your income. So what could it be? More responsibilities, more uncertainty. Well, it sounds very negative, doesn't it?
David, I'm interested to hear you sort of put down more responsibilities. Could this not be considered to be a positive thing? I suppose we could worry about how we'll cope with all the extra responsibilities and if we're up for the challenge, but it could also, do you think it could mean that we're trusted, perhaps?
Yeah, it depends upon how the responsibilities are allocated to you. Is it because you want the responsibility, that you've looked for it, that you've been pushing for it and now you have it? Or is it a case that responsibility has been pushed upon you because there is no other person who can actually fulfill that particular role? And you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the thing, that change, a lot of it is about perception. It's about its impact upon you, but it's also about your perception of the change. And I think really what we're looking at tonight is to get into the hearts and minds of people, which is really what coaching is all about, and look at things from a different angle.
Thank you.
But,
thanks for that answer.
That was a great question. Thank you, Janet. Oh, by the way, we haven't actually rehearsed the questions, have we? Janet?
No, that's an interesting one. Yes, I remember doing that in a training session once. It's quite an interesting technique, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from there, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she identified that when something serious happens, for example death, that we go through different stages of grief, which would be denial, ain't happening, what's it all about, when you realise it's impacting on you, and you get incredibly angry. But once you've been through those phases, the red mist has descended, then when the blue clouds come about, through whatever means, if it's coaching, if it's through just realising that the business has actually been losing money, for example, that you can then rationalise things, you start to accept it, and then ideally you will grow into the role. This doesn't always happen, don't get me wrong, but there will be people that will go through the first few stages and throw the toys out the pram and take off to a different company, which will they stay? Will they go? It might be that it's a device by the management perhaps to lose certain people. So where does it all go wrong? I think there's three key areas. It's in the planning, it's in communication, and it's in training. I thought about the planning before because if you think about our most recent excursion into Iraq, which, hey, we're not really going to go there from a political perspective, but we went through that. But the challenge was that there was lots of planning that went through actually invading, but there was no planning, or it seemed that there was no planning as to what happened once the Allied forces were there and how they'd actually come out. They had an exit strategy. Communication was mentioned before. Different people I've mentioned communication. The way I look at communication is there is good communication, which is great. There's bad communication, there's poor communication, and there's also no communication or miscommunication. So if you get communication right, I do believe that change management, the management of change, should really be effective. Training, is that considered? That should really be number one, number two on the list, because if you're going through a change process, which is going to have an impact upon the way that you do things, are you ready for that? Is that training in place? Are you able to fulfill that role? Have you got the skill sets? Or are you going to be drowning perhaps on the first day? So when it goes wrong, you become less effective, and the change then becomes more affective. So, coaching. What's coaching about? So you probably, or possibly, heard of Sir John Whitmore, coaching guru. The way that he sees it, again, it's the positivity which coaching brings. Janet, coaching, it's unlocking a person's potential to maximise their growth, which I think is fantastic. Coaches themselves are change experts, yeah, I certainly agree with that, who help leaders take responsibility and act to maximise their own potential. Quite simply, it's about, I don't know, sometimes it's holding the person's hand, it's providing that guidance, the support, the confidence, acting as a coach and or as a mentor to enable, ideally, enhanced performance. So it's not just a person fulfilling a role, but it's fulfilling a role to the required level and also maximising the potential. So within that role, if once they've fulfilled it effectively and sufficiently, they're then ready to move on to the next position.
Can I just jump in there? We've had some interesting comments going on here. We've got one here. Aren't some people change junkies? They get high on organisational change rather than real productivity. I think that's a great question.
Yeah, there is that expression, isn't there, which is change for change's sake.
Yes, exactly.
So... yeah, there will be people that will just change things about, just really for the hell of it, which may well go back to the power of control.
Yes, there's another comment here. New leadership quite often heralds a change, and I think that's very true. And I have to say, working in the OU, we have noticed that, yes. I agree with that one.
Yeah, so that's... absolutely right. So I think I do touch upon that at some stage, but new leadership, you have a new line manager, it's a new broom really, isn't it, that wants to sweep clean, so they'll bring their own ideas to whatever position it might be. It's quite possibly, I've done it before myself, what's worked before for you, if you move somewhere else which is in a similar kind of position or similar industry, you're probably going to take a lot of the attributes that you had before that work for you successfully and apply them in a new position. And challenge there is that they don't always necessarily work, because you're working with different people, perhaps in a different culture, different environment, with different challenges. But you're absolutely right, James. So, coaching. You may already be experts in coaching, fantastic, you've been through the coaching cycle, but this is really what coaching looks like. In its purest form, it's fairly straightforward. The first thing to do is to sit down with the person. What we've got in the middle is, as somebody once famously said, there are three people in this marriage. What I'm looking at there is the individual who's been coached, the coachee, the line manager, and the coach, because they need to work together. the line manager, and they need to ensure that the coaching addresses organisational challenges. The coachee needs to be on board, and the coach has got to have a good relationship with each. Now, whenever I coach, one of the first things that I stress is the confidentiality of the coaching, that I don't report back to the line manager, except insofar as I guess high-level information, that what we discuss within the coaching session remains between me and the coachee. It goes no further, because without that confidentiality, I don't think coaching could be as effective as it should be. So we talk about the needs within the individual. It's a bit of a skill gap analysis, perhaps. We look at where they need to get to, what they want, and we also look at the barriers as well, because it's great, having goals to go for, but if they're not aware of the barriers that might deflect us from this, then how on earth can we achieve them if barriers suddenly appear and we're not ready for them? This will help us to develop an action plan, and of course an action plan without action is only a piece of paper. And actions are great, but you have got to monitor them, so then you can sit down, you can have a chat, you can reflect upon failures. I know we're not supposed to say that word, but failure, success, where things went well or not, and then we can review this and look at perhaps new needs. If something didn't work well, what can we do to change that, and perhaps try a different direction. So, organisational coaching, the whens and the whos. When's the best time to do coaching? Well, you do it all the time, really. Before the change, to get people ready for it, during the change itself, to make sure it is actually working, and after the change, to see exactly how the change was received, and again, what the learning points are from that. Who's involved? Directors, everybody really, that's impacted by the change. I know it's not always going to be as easy to do, and I think on the next slide we look at what we need to consider. I'm just actually, you can probably hear a little bit of noise in the background. I'm just making sure that I've got my information, because I was hoping that the slides would actually come up. As you do your PowerPoint presentation, one word or line at a time. That ain't happening. So my question would be, if we're looking at organisational coaching, we've looked at the when, we've looked at the who would be involved in being coached. There's got to be some kind of identification of the coaches. Would you use an internal coach, or would you enlist an external coach? So what factors do you think you'd need to take into account? Internal coach or external coach? Over to you. What would you like to type up?
Personally, while people are thinking about that, I was initially I'd have said external coaches because they're impartial, but on the other hand, they wouldn't know the culture of the company. We've got Liam who's come back and said, what if the person being coached is seen as a problem needing to be fixed, when the issue is perhaps the quality of senior leadership or the processes for engaging staff in co-design in the first place. And JGW says external, tried internal, but it is not forthcoming. So a couple of good comments there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly the comments by, sorry, I was looking at JGW, it's Liam, really good comments. That will often happen, and it might be that they're looking at relationships there. It may be that there's not a good fit between the individual and the culture of the organisation. And if you're seen as being the problem, and you know it is elsewhere, personally, I'd ask myself, is that the kind of organisation that I want to work for?
That's interesting, actually, because we've also got, do internal coaches have as much impact as external coaches, who can be more impartial, perhaps? And I think that's what I meant probably when I said, external might be better. Another one says internal, they get more ownership of the change, and that indeed is true. Somebody else is voting for external. And internal will understand the culture, so it's a real mixed bag, isn't it, of opinions there?
Yeah. Oh, how to deal with blockers. Blockers, I was actually looking at blockers before. That is quite interesting. I mean, really, I don't know how much time it will spend on that, because really tonight, I think, as I said, we're kind of working through. You could spend a full session, a training session on what we're looking at, which could be, for a full day. I've delivered training courses over days, just really looking at change management. But yeah, it is a really good question. So let's just move on from that, because what I thought was, we're looking at Super Coach. The kind of factors that we're looking at from the organisation's perspective is the cost. So internal, external. External coach, certainly there's a cost attached to that for the contract, however long it might be. But internal, you've got a cost as well, because you are paying a salary, and you've got your opportunity cost if you are taking somebody away from their regular work. Time is going to have an impact as well. Do you need the coach tomorrow, or is it something that can be phased over a period? The scale of the coaching as well. Who's involved? Acceptance, I think that's a challenge too, which links into the confidentiality. It could be that if you think about coaching, which, as I mentioned, it's about sharing stuff, it's about sharing information, and it can, for me when I'm coaching, it can become quite personal. I normally carry tissues with me, because people that I'm coaching, not because I'm coaching under stress, but it's because when you create the environment that people can share, then sometimes it can get a little bit deep, and the body tells, and I'm talking about men and women. So confidentiality is incredibly crucial, which may well then have an impact upon the acceptance, and there may be some barriers to overcome. For example, would you feel comfortable being coached by your line manager? I don't know. I think that somebody else mentioned if we're looking at the ability, the experience, and the knowledge, that can go both ways. Coaching ability, coaching experience, coaching knowledge. Also, your ability within the organisation, your knowledge of the organisation, and your knowledge of the change itself that you want to get through. Does the coach really need to know a huge amount about the change management program? I don't know. That's debatable, really, because really the coaching is about looking at individuals, how they respond to that change management program, and making sure that they are receptive to it, that they're able to apply themselves as required to make the change a success. So, I don't know, quite often I'll start my coaching with a blank sheet of paper. Deliberately, so that it shows the person I'm coaching that I've got no preconceptions, which I think is really important. Did you want to comment on that, Janet?
No, that sort of seems very clear. But I mean, I actually, I must admit, you caught me distracted there, because I was going back to thinking about what happens when I was thinking about the blockers question, and I was thinking about an experience I had with somebody who was very, very negative, and it was very, very sapping to try and get them to try and change. And this was quite some years ago now, and it was a real effort. And despite me trying my very best to make everything right for them, I wonder how you deal with somebody like that. That's where my mind was going. I apologise.
No, not at all. I mean, blockers, I've worked with blockers, I've coached blockers, and I think it's really down to the quality of the coaching itself. And I mean, coaching, what is coaching about? It's about communication. It's taking people through the change. It's about listening to individuals, which we don't always do. It's asking the right questions. It's about being prepared to challenge and encourage individuals, and it's about praising people as well. So what I'd suggest is that if you are looking at a blocker, how do you engage each one of these in your dealings with that person?
Yes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I must admit, I used to be told I needed to listen. I think I proved that tonight.
Sorry, give that again. I missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, if we can sit down with people and provide that confidential arena, sometimes we can be blockers. So you tell about yourself, JS. We can be blockers for good reasons. However, to manage change, everyone needs to be on board. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, there's what I've done tonight is to try and keep this fairly simple. There are all kinds of different I'm sure, as you know, management models, you know, sort of going through change and how to manage people, when to manage people in different areas, and blockers certainly forms part of that, because really what you want is that blocker to become a change champion. However, to manage change, everyone needs to be on board. Ideally, everyone needs to be on board, but you will find people, there will be people that will drag their heels, you know, for the reasons that I mentioned before. So again, I would ask you, I'd go back and ask you to take yourself through that. Have you sat down? Have you listened? Have you really listened to the person? I heard what you're saying. You know, I've actually got my hand up, you know, sort of pushing away. I hear what you're saying. You know, is that really listening? Yeah, I'd suggest not. Questioning, having the right questions, you know, and everything else, and praising the person, getting the person really on board, is for them to see how it's going to benefit them. So I think for us to, before we start to throw stones at other people, we need to make sure, you know, that we're not in any glass house.
You're absolutely right. Yes, you're absolutely right. And JS says Levitt use of self as an instrument of change, organisational behaviour. Very good. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But what we're looking for is benefits that we want to come through the coaching is to raise the awareness of the change itself, the impact it's going to have. We're being very positive here, but we want to make sure they know how it's going to impact upon them positively, which can be difficult if you are going through a situation of, for example, financial constraints, the impact that's going to have, redundancy. You have got to look for a brighter future, because it's about relationships as well. You know, good communication certainly, but you want relationships that will actually come through, and you want to be able to trust your manager as well. What the coaching does is to allow people to talk, to chat through issues, you know, sort of personal stuff. I don't think that we really create that time, that space for people. There are good reasons for it, but because you've got so many things, you're juggling so many different plates and spinning balls, that was deliberate, that you haven't really created that time space for the person within your diary. But I ask you, do you think that creating that time space would be effective? Do you think it would help? You might say no, but if you haven't tried it, try it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, at least you know that's something else that you can take off and try something different. But it is about creating that understanding as well. It's about relationships moving forward. The person understands what the change is about, how it's going to impact upon them, and we want them really to feel involved as part of the change. If they feel remote, going back to the start, one of the words was impose. If it's imposed upon somebody, can you expect that person to respond positively to that change? I'd suggest no, unless you've really sold it to them. And again, it goes back to communication. You need good communication. You need ongoing communication. You need to keep people involved in the whole process and tell them what's happening. And if you don't, well, you will reap what you sow. So,
there's an interesting one in again from Liam. It may be extreme, but should NHS England offer coaching to junior doctors to help them consider what approach they want to take to the modernisation of the workforce? how do coaches avoid becoming complicit?
Yeah, I think I'm not doing anything political tonight, but I think you're absolutely right. If you want to, I mean, let's be quite honest, if you want change to be really successful, then the people to drive that change forward, so they're not the blockers that I mentioned before, they've got to be involved in that really from the start. So it goes to your management style, really, how you lead your team, how you lead your organisation. Are you consensual? Are you dictatorial? But yeah, if you've got if they have the junior doctors, I don't know, a working party from the start involved in that to say, yeah, we want to change your contracts and these are the goals that we need to achieve, and how do you think we could best achieve them? If they went back to their colleagues and said, we've come up with the government and we've come up with this plan that we think will work, do you think they would be having the strikes? I suggest not. Final question or statement, how do coaches avoid becoming complicit? Well, that is I mentioned before about the confidentiality, that you have got to be quite neutral, not take sides, provide understanding certainly, but not take sides when you're coaching. Because once you start to do that, if you let personal feelings override the requirement for coaching, which is a good outcome for all parties, then you might find that you become biased. And if you, as a coach, detect that you have got some bias in your or prejudice within your coaching relationship, don't coach. Ask somebody else about it.
Thank you, David.
So coaches,
that's interesting, actually. Yeah, you're quite right. So, personal, just to really to give you an example, internal promotion, I'm sure that we've all been there before, but you have somebody who's good in the team, that could be yourself, I've been there, that you've been promoted, so yesterday you were one of the team, today you're the team leader or the manager. How well does that go down with everybody else? I suspect that in a lot of cases it's a bit of a challenge. But yesterday you were just one of the boys, one of the girls. Today there's this kind of barrier between you. And what kind of barrier is it? It's a very grey area, but people still see exactly the same person. You're wearing, I don't know, probably similar clothes, unless you've transferred from workforce material into a suit. And it can cause issues within the organisation, that the person who's been promoted will start to question themselves. I think we might have touched something earlier in relation to this, they start to question about how good they are at the job, should they have gotten promotion. The relationships are suffering, there may be stress, tension within the workplace, which means that the organisation itself may be suffering, because whatever's happening within will probably be transmitted to customers through customer service, through attitude, and it won't be a nice place to work. So what I did was to work with the individual concerned. We discussed the situation, what had happened, why she actually went for the promotion. We talked about herself, just really to raise her spirits and make sure that she really did feel confident still about her promotion and about moving forwards, and why she was the right person for that particular role. We then developed an action plan, so we looked at what she needed to do to get the team on board. We developed a communication strategy where she talked with her friends, former friends, her colleagues, and they were still her friends certainly, but there was certainly a level between them. But it was a really case of making sure that they were aware that that was there for a reason, that if there was a barrier, there should be no barrier between, but there is professional distance
that they do have to respect her. In the same way as, of course, she would be respecting her colleagues, and then focus on the team development. What that can suggest is that if there is room for internal promotion, then there's no reason why another person, perhaps the person who took her role, isn't going to be right for promotion at some stage in the future as well. So it's about the team, it's about the team bonding, but it is all about the communication, and it's about sitting down, having a chat with people, and making sure that, if you like, it's a group coaching, that they're able to share concerns, which they did with her, and from that, so they were able to move forward. The relationship wasn't exactly the same as it was before, which you wouldn't expect, because, hey, if you're a manager, you've got to organise different things that people don't always like discipline. So the relationship was changed, but it wasn't impaired, which I think was an important thing. So I mentioned before about the grief stages. Yeah, she hated what was happening. There was that sense of denial about herself and her ability, and a good reality check. There was anger, of course, so, sort of, why is it happening to me? So we had a look at that as well. I mean, clearly if you're the manager, then you are, I don't know, a target perhaps, or you could be seen as perhaps being a target. So the rationalisation was, okay, it's happened, so what are we going to do about it? So we then developed the action plan, and she's accepted the responsibilities that go with the position, and she's ready to move on. So once that was in place, once we got the team working with and for her and for each other, then happy days. You're then looking forward to, what's next, what can we do, which can be to develop the team moving forward, and her own CPD as well. What's the next position, what's the next promotion, that's coming up. So I'd suggest that in that particular case, it was difficult for her, but she came through that and she has come out of that a far better person. This is my coaching, if you like, the way I coach. It's all about talking, which I have been talking so much tonight. When I'm coaching, believe it or not, I do shut up, and the ratio is something like, I don't know, 20% me, 80% the person that I'm working with. Accentuate the positive as the song goes. We're looking at values and the value of the individual, the value to and for the organisation. It's about inspiring as well. It's making sure that following the coaching session that the person is willing, able to move forward and feel confidence in themselves. And coaching is about confidence, really. It's that feel-good factor. And it's about the delivery as well. I've put deliver smartly. I'm guessing, could be wrong, that most people here tonight will be aware of and probably use the SMART principle when it comes to planning. Just before we move on, Jeremy Hunt, I'm sure he could. Big challenges. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, David. Yes, Liam has talked about the promotion. This is a good example of common sense. Promoted manager may need help in coaching to reframe relationships and emphasize authority and seniority without seeming authoritarian.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's where the coaching can certainly assist, because you're working at the same level. The individuals see you at the same level, on a one-to-one basis. But it's an opportunity really to repair perhaps relationships as well. Thank you.
And we have actually run over slightly, so I think we'll probably call it a night tonight. Thank you very much, David. That was fascinating, and I can tell by the level of discussion that went on that everybody enjoyed it. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and thank you again.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you everybody for attending tonight. I hope you found it useful.